All right. So you know how sometimes you stumble upon like a text or a book and it feels like it unlocks some sort of hidden code,
Hmm.
that kind of thing? Like suddenly everything clicks into place?
Yeah.
That's the feeling I got when I dove into the material you sent us, Storacles of Prophesy, the mystery of the Daniel 2 image, distilled and explained.
Oh, wow.
It's quite a mouthful, I know.
It is.
But stick with us here.
Yeah.
Our mission is to pull out the really juicy bits, the fascinating threads from this text,
Right.
and weave them into something, well, something clearer, something more illuminating for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great way to put it.
Okay, so,
We're essentially dealing with a source that really dives deep into this dramatic moment in the Old Testament,
mhm.
King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon. He has this incredibly vivid dream, and the catch is
Okay.
he wants his advisors not just to, interpret it, but to tell him what he actually dreamt.
Wait, so they have to, like, remember the dream for him.
Exactly.
That's a tall order.
Oh, it really is. And it puts those wise men in a very, very precarious position.
I mean, how could they possibly win in that situation?
Right. It's like trying to solve a riddle you don't even know the question to.
And when they fail, and how could they not?
Yeah.
Nebuchadnezzar's reaction is straight out of some ancient thriller or movie.
You could say that.
He decrees that all the wise men in his kingdom are to be executed.
Wow. Talk about high stakes.
Suddenly, being a royal advisor isn't looking so appealing.
Not at all.
This is where Daniel comes in.
Yes.
He's a captive described in the source as a man of deep faith, and he steps forward, offering to untangle this whole royal mystery.
It's a bold move.
A real high-stakes gamble.
Yeah, and what I find really interesting is this tension between the king's anxieties
Mhm.
about his empire's future and what the source presents as divine intervention through this dream.
Right, so it's not just about Nebuchadnezzar's personal worries or curiosity.
Not at all. It's framed as a revelation about what's to come in the latter days.
Wow, so it's like a sneak peek.
Yeah, kind of like a sneak peek into the future, a glimpse of the empires that would directly impact God's people.
Okay, so essentially the heart of this deep dive
Yes.
is to really grasp the meaning and the significance of this strange statue, this multi-mineral image.
That haunted the king's sleep.
Right, and to understand why this dream happened in the first place.
Absolutely.
According to the source, Nebuchadnezzar, he's at the height of his power,
Hmm.
ruling over this truly dominant empire.
Right.
But he seems to be pondering what comes next, what lies beyond his reign.
Yeah, he's concerned about his legacy, the long-term prospects of Babylon.
And the text suggests that this wasn't just him, philosophizing late at night.
There's a purpose behind it. The source points to God having a specific reason for giving him this vision.
Okay, so let's break down what the source says about this divine purpose.
Well, it really emphasizes this concept of divine sovereignty,
Divine sovereignty.
the idea that a higher power is ultimately orchestrating everything.
So this dream wasn't just a random occurrence.
Not according to the source. It was a deliberate unveiling of the major global powers and their interactions with God's people
Throughout history.
throughout history. And that phrase in the latter days,
Yeah.
it really highlights the long-range scope of this prophecy.
Right, it's not just about Nebuchadnezzar's time, it's stretching far beyond that.
Exactly.
And then we have this stark contrast with the Babylonian wise men.
Yeah.
They claim to have this special insight, this connection to the divine,
Right.
but when it comes down to it, they can't even recall the king's dream.
They can't perform the most basic task.
It's like the source is pointing out the hollowness of their claims.
It's a powerful moment because it exposes the vulnerability of even the most powerful earthly authority.
I never thought about it that way.
The king depended on these wise men for supernatural understanding,
Mm-hmm.
and their failure to deliver really underscores the limits of human wisdom, especially when it comes to divine matters.
And Nebuchadnezzar's reaction doesn't mess around.
No, he doesn't.
He sentences everyone to death, including Daniel and his friends who weren't even there.
That really highlights his absolute power and his frustration.
Yeah, there's a real sense of desperation there.
Absolutely.
So Daniel finds out about this terrifying decree hanging over everyone's heads.
Right. And instead of panicking, he takes a very courageous step.
Yeah, he goes straight to the king.
He asks for time, a reprieve. He confidently tells Nebuchadnezzar that he can reveal both the dream and its meaning.
Wow, that's a lot of confidence.
It is, and the source emphasizes that he turns to prayer with his friends, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah.
Okay, so it's not just him relying on his own smarts.
No, it highlights the idea that true understanding of divine mysteries comes from a divine source.
not just human intellect or, occult practices.
Exactly.
And then the dream is revealed to Daniel.
Yes.
And as the source meticulously records, Daniel gives all credit and glory to God.
Absolutely. There's a quote where he says, "I thank thee and praise thee, O thou God of my fathers. There is a God in heaven that revealeth secrets."
It really hammers home this concept that nothing happens outside of God's knowledge and permission.
That's a key takeaway from the source.
Right. It's offering a specific lens through which to view world events.
It suggests this level of divine orchestration even in the rise and fall of empires,
which often seem driven by human ambition and conflict.
but are presented here as part of a bigger divinely guided plan.
All right, so let's get to the heart of it.
Yeah.
The dream itself.
Okay.
Daniel tells Nebuchadnezzar about two main visions.
Mm-hmm.
First, this massive statue made of different metals.
Right.
And second, this mysterious stone that appears out of nowhere.
Yes.
Can you describe the statue? What metals is it made of?
Okay, so starting from the top,
Okay.
the head is made of gold.
Gold, okay.
Then the chest and arms are silver. The belly and thighs are bronze.
Bronze.
The legs are iron.
Iron.
And finally, the feet are a mixture of iron and clay.
Iron and clay, that's a strange combination.
It is. And as the interpretation unfolds, each metal symbolizes a specific kingdom that would rise to power.
Okay, so let's break it down.
Yeah, let's do that.
The head of gold, that shiny, magnificent head.
The source is very clear about this. It represents King Nebuchadnezzar himself and the Babylonian Empire.
The Babylonian Empire, which reigned from about 612 to 539 BC.
Right.
It's depicted as this incredibly wealthy and powerful entity, the starting point in this prophetic timeline.
What's fascinating is that this prophecy starts in Daniel's own time.
Oh, interesting. So it's not looking back at past empires.
No, it's a forward-looking projection beginning with Babylon.
And that head of gold signifies the very top, the first dominant power in this sequence of kingdoms.
Precisely.
Next, we have the chest and arms of silver,
right,
representing the Medo-Persian Empire.
The conquerors of Babylon, they ruled from 539 to 331 BC.
And while silver might be less valuable than gold,
the source points out that this empire proved to be incredibly enduring.
There's even a little historical tidbit about taxes being paid in silver during their reign.
That's a great example of how the source connects these symbolic representations to actual historical realities.
Right, so it's not just abstract symbolism, it's grounded in real events.
Exactly.
Okay, then we move down to the belly and thighs made of bronze. This represents the Greek Empire under Alexander the Great.
The famous conqueror who defeated the Medo-Persians around 331 BC.
And their reign lasted until about 168 BC.
The source even uses this imagery of brazen-coated Greek soldiers.
Oh, so tying the metal to a specific characteristic of their army?
Right, it creates this vivid connection.
Then there's a pattern emerging here.
Yeah.
Each metal is less valuable than the one before it.
Gold, then silver, then bronze.
But they seem to increase in their historical reach and the length of their influence.
That's a key observation.
Then we get to those strong legs of iron.
The symbol of the mighty Roman Empire.
The Roman Empire, which rose to power around 168 BC.
And dominated the scene until AD 476.
The text really emphasizes Rome's strength and its significance as the ruling power when Jesus Christ was born.
It even makes this bold statement about 1,000 years of accurately foretold history.
Yeah, it's quite a climb.
It really underscores the perceived precision of this prophecy from the source's perspective.
The image of iron is a powerful one, too.
Yeah, it perfectly captures the strength, the durability, even the unyielding nature associated with the Roman Empire.
Finally, we reach the feet of the statue. This strange combination of iron and clay.
Right.
The source interprets this as the divided state of the Roman Empire after its fall in AD 476.
Instead of being conquered by another single empire, it fragmented into all these separate kingdoms.
Due to various barbarian invasions?
It wasn't a clean takeover.
Oh.
The source actually lists 10 of these tribal groups.
Oh, wow, 10.
The Ostrogoths, Visigoths, Franks, Vandals, Alemannians, Swedes, Anglo-Saxons, Heralds, Lombards, and Burgundians.
It's fascinating how the source connects this to modern Europe, saying that 7 of these tribes are the historical roots of contemporary European nations.
It specifically mentions the Anglo-Saxons as the ancestors of the English.
And the Franks as the ancestors of the French.
Right. These are just examples, of course.
And this leads to the next point in the source.
Okay.
The prophecy that these divided kingdoms symbolized by that iron and clay mixture would never truly unite.
despite numerous attempts throughout history.
The text mentions royal marriages, strategic alliances, treaties, all these efforts to unify Europe.
And then it lists several historical figures who tried and failed.
Charlemagne, Napoleon, Kaiser Wilhelm Mussolini, Hitler.
It's interesting how the source brings this ancient prophecy into modern times.
Yeah, arguing for its continued relevance.
Despite centuries of political and military campaigns aimed at unification.
Europe has largely remained a collection of independent nations.
Right.
The source even briefly touches on the Book of Revelation, mentioning a future attempt at global religious unity.
But it reaffirms that Daniel's prophecy points to continued political division among these powers.
Okay, so we've got this impressive statue.
Yeah.
A bit shaky at the base, maybe.
With those feet of iron and clay.
Exactly, but overall it represents the sweep of earthly empires.
Right.
Now let's turn to the second key element of Nebuchadnezzar's dream.
Right.
That stone cut out without human hands.
Ah.
What does the source say about its meaning?
Well, according to the source, it represents the kingdom of heaven.
The kingdom of heaven.
A kingdom established by God himself.
And that phrase, cut out without hands,
It emphasizes that this kingdom isn't a human creation.
it's not something we build or achieve on our own.
Precisely.
And the timing is crucial too.
Right.
It's prophesied to be established in the days of these kings.
Meaning, during the era of the divided European powers?
Those iron and clay feet.
Exactly. The source even points to Matthew 25.31-34 as a description of this coming kingdom.
But this stone doesn't just sit there passively, does it?
No, it takes action.
What happened?
The source describes the stone striking the image.
Okay.
Right at its weakest point, the
Yeah.
feet of iron and clay. And it completely crushes the statue.
It doesn't just topple over.
It's pulverized into dust.
Wow.
Then the stone itself grows and expands into this massive mountain that fills the entire earth.
The symbolism is pretty intense.
It is.
It's not just another empire taking over.
No, it's something totally different, something that ultimately replaces all human kingdoms.
The source really emphasizes that God's kingdom is a complete replacement.
Not just a continuation or an evolution of what came before.
It even references Revelation 21.1 to support this idea of a new order.
Right.
So what was Nebuchadnezzar's reaction to all this?
Well, according to the source, he acknowledged Daniel's God as a God of gods and a Lord of kings and a revealer of secrets.
So even the mighty ruler of Babylon recognizes a higher power at work.
It's a significant moment.
And Daniel and his friends didn't just get verbal acknowledgement.
No, they experienced some real tangible benefits.
Because of their faithfulness.
Exactly.
What happened?
The source says they were elevated to positions of leadership within the Babylonian Empire.
Wow. That's a pretty significant reward.
It connects this to a broader principle from 1 Samuel 2.30.
Which says?
That God honors those who honor him.
So looking back at this deep dive into storacles of prophecy, it's quite an epic narrative.
It is.
Nebuchadnezzar's dream, as interpreted in this text, offers this grand prophetic overview of major world empires.
Starting with Babylon.
Then Medo-Persia, Greece, Rome.
Leading all the way to our present divided world, symbolized by those feet of iron and clay.
And it doesn't just end there.
No.
This historical progression, according to the source, culminates in the establishment of God's eternal kingdom.
Represented by that stone that shatters the image and fills the whole world.
It's a particular perspective on history.
One that sees divine guidance shaping events towards a final and ultimate conclusion.
And that leads to a really thought-provoking question posed at the end of the source material.
Oh, yeah.
For you, our listener, considering this grand view of history and God's ultimate sovereignty, what does it mean for how you understand and maybe even relinquish control in your own life?
That's a big question.
It's a powerful invitation to think about how this ancient prophecy might inform our own perspectives and choices.
It definitely gives you something to ponder.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.